What is up, fishing familia? It's your boy Luis, or that boy Segoy on the gram. Today, we are going to be talking about one of my favorite plastics that I hold near and dear, and that's the gimme. And more specifically, we're talking about the best color ever created, and that's Sugoi Sagi. If you fish the gimme, I'm going to be talking about a couple different ways I like to rig it. So without further ado, let's get into it. Woohoo, there we go. A little bit bigger one. Oh, that's sweet. Ah, yeah. Yes. Little gap jig and Sugoi Sagi combo there. Mm-hmm. Little guy swallowed that thing. Oh yes, that's a good one. Oh yeah. That Sugoi Sagi on the gap jig, son. Dirty little combo. All right, so been fishing the gimme for quite a while now, and it's pretty much taken place of, I go to this thing over a beaver now these days. Like, it's just something I have a lot of confidence in. So when Ben gave me the opportunity to come up with a color for the gimme, I was super stoked for it, and one thing I noticed, there's almost all the colors were pretty much like gill, right? And we got a lot of shad here. So I wanted something that could kind of cover both grounds, right? So I did with that little pearl belly. Just got a really good overall gill or shad, you're covered both ways, right? So my favorite way to throw it is the free rig. And I've talked about that before, right? So I like to stay within the 7 gram to 5 gram range typically. I'm throwing it like on a spinning setup. I like 8 to 12 pound typically. I like that lighter line because I get a lot more feedback on this, especially with this bait and this lighter weight, right? If I keep it in between those two, I'm feeling that tail thump real hard, right? And I'm, just kind of like a crankbait, you feel, personally I feel better, right? Like I'm feeling the thump, 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 I kind of know what's going on down there, right? So same thing with the gimme, right? You're on your lifts, you're getting that, and then the stop, and then you can kind of feel it fall. You pick up the slack, right? Fishing the gimme, like first couple times I took it out, right? I'm fishing it in spots that I knew that there were like a lot of gill eaters and stuff like that. So, like it works really good for that forage. And I'm going to places where like I know they have the shad and stuff too. And like I said, that's kind of why I came up with that color, just to cover a little bit more of that shad. But I like fishing that either spot for either type of forage, right? I felt like I'd gotten a lot of big bites on this bait, right? It's relatively smaller, it's at 3.5 inches. But I don't know, it's just one of those baits that gets these big bites, and I just catch a lot of fish on it too overall, so I just have a lot of confidence in it. So other than the free rig, which like we all kind of know and love, right? You can swim it is another way that works pretty good for me. So if you're trying to keep it a little finessier, I've liked fishing it on just kind of like your own, put it together yourself. So I like the Ryugi 2/0 long throat offset. I use that for the free rig too. But if I want to swim it kind of, more finessey like that, you just kind of add a little weight. You can kind of crimp it. And then, they have different weights that you can get. And that's the Decoy DS14 here. And I talked about this guy before. I like using this for a lot of backlight and like small swim baits and stuff like that. But so you just kind of rig it up like on this thing. And when you're I got this one put together now. So this hook fits perfectly, right? I got it coming right up to this little protrusion that they have where you set the tip or the hook point in, which I know when they designed this bait, they like fishing the bull flat, but a problem with the bull flat is when you're fishing around wood and a lot of cover, you have to expose your hook and put it back in. So a lot of times, you're going over wood or coming through grass and you get that hook point stuck on there. So what they did was they put that little extra bit of plastic there so you can set your hook point in. So that's a pretty sick thing I think they did with this plastic. But back to the swim, just kind of like this, right? And then you can kind of just swim it on the bottom. Like I said, this is a little more finessey, right? Drag it on the bottom, kind of more just like you would a Jika, but a little bit lighter, right? So it's getting a little more fall, a little more slow action, right? The other way I was fishing it quite a bit was throwing it on the Gap Jig, which it pairs perfectly with. I mean, they pretty much designed this to go with that. Another cool thing, right? They got a small little dot, right? I mean, right here, you can't see it because I ran the hook through it, but there's a real small little dot right here. I think it's like 3 ridges back. Just a small little thing coming out, and that's where you run the hook point through for the Gap Jig, and that lines up perfectly. So I know you're thinking man, that's not very much hook for that bait. I mean, that's barely taking up like a quarter of the plastic. So, I mean, I kind of thought the same thing, right, when I was first throwing this. And I mean, I definitely missed a fish or two when I was first, you know, learning it. But it's, for me, I kind of think of it like a frog, right? I kind of crank down on it, I feel the weight, and then I give it a good set, right? So it's a pretty small hook, but that's kind of the advantage to it, is like you're fishing this around cover. It's got a pretty sturdy weed guard, so it gets in and out of wood and grass and like cane and stuff like that really well. So this has been something kind of like I fish more, you know, heavy cover, more of the power aspect, the free rig, and that weighted hook is kind of, you know, more finesse-y, more open water stuff. Now you can definitely do this with the big gimme too. That's one way I like to fish that one a lot. There's not too many jigs out there with such a short shank hook that it's gonna look good. But I mean, if you have other compact jigs, I mean, as long as it's not taking up like about, I'd say like more than half, it'd be fine. Like I've used like this little Picasso one, and like some other smaller jigs like that have been okay, but this one really gets the best action, like the best swim. You get in the bait, just the whole thing, right? You got a lot more plastic loose to get that body just activated. And that's one thing I think is really sick too about the gimme is Bottom Up makes more full body baits. Like I think Ben has mentioned this before, but they make these bigger baits. I mean, not that this is a big bait, but the action is smaller and more subtle for the size of the bait, right? So I mean, you see a lot of these fish, like small bait fish or gills, whatever, right? Their action isn't always super exaggerated, right? There's not always, you know, jumping around or like quick, you know, movements and all that. So I think that's one thing that's kind of key to the gimme that gets it bit, right, is it's got subtle action to it. I know when you're lifting it and moving it through the water, these appendages kind of collapse and it gets that tail kicking. So even on the jig too, like, you know, you're swimming it slowly, maybe you give it kind of a rip and a fall, you're gonna get that thumping that you were getting from like throwing it on a free rig or what. So weight for the gap jig, I just fish kind of whatever. It doesn't, like, you know, fishing shallow, I'll go with a little bit lighter weight. Fishing deeper, you know, go a little heavier. That's not really, you know, that's just kind of pertinent to the water that you're fishing. But I will say that I do like to run that inset keeper from Ryugi. So I got that on the back there. And that just helps with, you know, you got a little bit more plastic hanging off the back there. Just helps keep the life of that plastic a little bit longer. I was throwing this bait on two main setups. I mean, I do throw it on like a Texas rig and stuff from time to time. So I do throw that on like the Baltoro and stuff, but most of the stuff I was talking about today and like the footage, all that, this is all on these two rods. And that's the Power Nose. Love this rod, talk about this all the time. I think this is hands down the best free rig rod in the shop. I know it goes against a couple of the other guys, but I fish around a lot of cover, you know, a little bit heavier line sometimes, and this rod just has the backbone and the power to get these fish out, as well as the tip to feel all those little, you know, vibrations and all that the gimme and like a lot of these other smaller soft plastics are giving off when I'm throwing that free rig. I'm running it on, I got that, been trying out some new stuff, trying to replace the D-Braid, and I got the X Braid, the sinking version. This one's been pretty sick. It's a little, just a tad bit noisier. That's the only difference I've really felt, but you know, we all get used to what we like, and it's hard to get away from that, and sometimes unfortunately we have to. So I've been very pleased with this though, and I recommend it. And then I just use some kind of Sunline Leader. like I said, 12 typically. Sometimes if I want to get real finessey, I'll go down to 8, but you know, somewhere around there on the spinning rod. All right, and the other rod I was using was the Frogman, also by Braid. And this rod I've talked a lot about, you know, frog, top water, stuff like that. Any of these like moving, kind of moving bait that you need a little bit more power behind, right? So I was swimming the jig on this, and it works kind of in the same way like with the swim jig, right? It has just enough of a tip on there where I'm able to kind of work it, and I'm feeling that, you know, the bait hit the bottom, you know, every time it kind of rolls, you know. So that's why I chose this rod for that. It's and then it's got the power behind it, you know, to get these fish out of the cover and whatever I'm throwing it into. I really like this rod for a lot of stuff, you know, and I'm always finding more things to use it for. So that's the Frogman from Braid. Alrighty guys, and that about wraps us up. Thank you so much for watching. Jeff is gonna link all the stuff we talked about today in the video down below, and hit me up on the gram if you guys have any questions about setups or riggings and all that. And hope you guys get out there and try some of this stuff yourself and stick a nice one. Good luck out there.